Good evening, morning, day, afternoon again. My name is Rain of Tears. That's my moniker on YouTube, aka Ed, my real name. And what I'd like to discuss with you in this particular session is the whole issue of the best names for black children, whether they be quote unquote original names. And I'm not making value judgments when I say original names. Let's just say names that, in terms of the individuals, the parents that are involved, they may be a combination of 2 or 3 names of significant relatives in their respective lives that are combined to make a new name that's not it's not commonly known as a name. So that's when I say original name. Or should you go with an ethnic name, an ethnic African name from a particular African country which has a definitive meaning? Or should a parent or parents go for a quote unquote all-American apple pie type name, like, well, we know what those are, just a traditional Courtney, etc. Now, it's a much more complex scenario than you might just think of that. But what I'll go with is the basic premises first, pro and con. Individuals that are against the whole concept of original names is that it would hinder a child when they become of age and they're trying to get their first job. They may be going on to something more meaningful, something of a high level, like the medical field, or legal field, law enforcement, or even just, doesn't even have to be something high level. It could be just like basic employment, but their first opportunity. And in terms of getting their foot in the door, they would feel that having an original name would hinder that process. They wouldn't even get a chance to get that first interview with a name that sounds so far out of the mainstream. Individuals that are for original names would counter that by saying that it doesn't really make a difference, that original names have a meaning for and a value that they've associated with, as I gave an example of why someone might name their child or children original names, and that the strength of however they're going to do in the interview process and get their first job or going into college, medical, or whatever field or educational level of attainment that they choose to pursue is something that they're going to achieve on their own, and their name is not going to hinder it. Now, I'm going to give my take on it and sort of talk about why it's not as simplistic as it may seem. My opinion, based on what I've seen and heard and personal experience, I don't have that type of name, but I'll get into that, is that there are anti-discrimination laws in the books, as everybody knows or whatever. But in the real world and in real life, just like with all things, there might be laws or whatever, but, sometimes there are ways of getting around that. And I say that to say that a name that's really, really far out of the mainstream, even if there's a way, that could hinder the process of the child actually getting that interview, to present their credentials, to present the value that they might have or whatever. They may not even get a chance to say that, because the name is sort of announces to the organization, which again, it violates anti-discrimination laws. But like I say, just being realistic, this is a black person, basically, which it shouldn't be like that. But there's a lot of things in the world that things shouldn't be like, but we know that they are like that. So that's the con side against it. And then in terms of the ethnic names would be real actual names, say from real, like say countries in terms of our heritage, Black Americans, names from various countries in Africa, like from Nigeria, Ethiopia, whatever, whatever country, something that's been That's a real name that has a real legitimate meaning and so forth. Now, one thing that some people that say in terms of go with the say that the name doesn't really make a difference is that they'll say, well, like, look at other ethnic groups, in particular, like the vast numbers of Asians that are getting into the employment field. I'm talking about East Asians, like Indians and Pakistanis or whatever, or even the Chinese, whatever, Latinos, whatever. They say that their names aren't quote unquote all American names. However, I would counter that by saying that sort of falls into like their real names. They might not be mainstream names, but they're actual names associated with the ethnic group, the country of origin, etc. So it's not something that was made up. And, companies take a look at that too, informally. Like I say, the discrimination stuff is in place, but, if there's a name like I'll give a last name of Patel, that's not a first name, but you say Patel or Chen, those are names that are known. You don't even have to know that much about Indian backgrounds and Chinese backgrounds respectively, but you know that those are real names. However, and I'm just being far-fetched now, forgive me for just using this example, if somebody had a name of Chester Valenia Kanyaloba, Jabanda, some name that's really far out the mainstream, that's something that's, that doesn't have any meaning. You might have, the parent might have given value as examples I gave, but that's something that's not a real, a real name that's associated with an ethnic group or whatever. So that's one example. Now, on the other hand, a name is just going to get you so far. And that, I do agree with that aspect too, because, even if you get in and you haven't been automatically labeled as black by someone looking at your information and just automatically assuming just by the name, how it sounds and spelled or whatever, that it's a quote unquote black name, you come in for the interview, the child still has to have something going on in terms of what they've done, their education, their work background, et cetera, character, that's going to indicate that they're worth being given a shot, so they've got to get it on their merit at some point anyway. So that's a valid point. Now, I will use myself, for example, in terms of my own son. I gave my son I'm not going to give his name for his own privacy's sake, but, I gave him a quote unquote all-American name, and he's an adult now and he's doing okay. But he's no world beater or anything like that. And a part of that, or most of that, is on his own accord. He didn't, he's got to step it up a little bit, and a part of it might be me. I might not have, been the best, I was okay parent, decent, good parent, whatever, but, I could have done better, in terms of like laying out the foundation. I have a sister, younger sister. She's did a much better job of laying out the foundation for her daughter, my niece. And sort of segue into that now, my niece is of a so-called multiracial background, and what my sister did was she gave her a traditional first name, but then as some black parents do, they might give an ethnic name or an original name as the middle name or whatever. Now, that might be a good coping way to deal with it, So for my niece, what my sister did, that sort of honors the tradition, or acknowledges, that she is black and something else. But, it wouldn't hinder her potentially, like when she becomes of age, as I've described or whatever, and, someone's looking at the name, this person's blah, blah, first name, last name, it could be anyone. And that's what you want, just an open shot to get a chance. So, these are the factors that have been presented. What do you think? It's been a heated topic, pro and con. So again, this is Rain of Tears. And as I always indicate, I appreciate you taking your time to check out my video presentation. There is a whole group of good video presentations here on YouTube on various subject matters. So I appreciate you taking your time to watch mine. So as always, I wish everyone a good day, evening, or night. Peace to all. Take care.